The speed at which the conversations are happening, Jason and I probably have a conversation every day or twice a day. Other members have had conversations, so the speed is ramping up and the decisions are getting faster and faster. So that's great, but we need to all collaborate and kind of coalesce around some common tenets. So we're working on that. We put this picture in, this is what we're all working towards, right? Having more students and more students. And these are students from a San Diego event where we gave out $50,000 in scholarships. So this is just the picture I always look at and think, and all the people students we had in the room, this is why we're doing everything we're doing. And then also so that some of us can retire one day. So we need the pipeline filled. So I think a number of you have seen this funnel before. It's a bit grim when we look at it because you look and see the funnel is going narrower and narrower and narrower as we go down. But I would suggest to you, there's a lot of opportunity and bright lights in this. So if you look at the bottom, there's two statistics. 1 in 8 college business-related bachelor's graduates earn an accounting degree. If we could impact that, and it would be 3 in 8 or 4 in 8, you think about the difference we could make in the pipeline and those that we could attract to the profession. So a couple of the initiatives that we're working on is really telling the compelling story, right? And all the diversity and possibilities that there are within the pipeline. Another initiative that I'm involved in is with the AAA, the American Accounting Association, and that is looking at the principles course and how can we make that a bit more engaging. Not necessarily talk and start out with debits and credits. I happen to love T accounts, but maybe you don't start that way. And talk about what we do for the economy, the marketplace, and everything we do for the business community. So a much broader conversation that can happen and something that's more engaging than what we currently do. So that initiative is in progress. And then less than half of the individuals, the accounting graduates, sit for the exam. So how can we change that to be as rigorous, but easier, reduce the friction within the exam and help people get through it much easier than currently is happening. And those are initiatives we're working on as well. The Institute is working on as far as one of their programs. So we can impact this, and there's definitely trigger points that we're looking at.
Real quick before you go to the next slide, the top two trends looking at starting college, graduating from college, those are global, holistic trends. There's a lot of different factors impacting a lot of different professions. Those are difficult to for us to kind of solve, but we have a lot more opportunities as you kind of move down to there to kind of capture those folks what they declare, how do we get those business majors to think about accounting, and that's where our sweet spot is to make a real impact.
That's a great point, because there's a lot of professions out there that are having the same issue, but these are the impact points. These are really all the organizations that are working together, and I will say it's very collaborative. It has to be. We all need to work together to solve this problem. Didn't happen overnight. It's a complex problem, and it's not going to go away, in a year. So how do we work together? Like I said, coalesce around some common tenets and move forward with some initiatives. Jason's going to talk a bit more, but we are having more and more conversation regarding mobility. We know that's key. We have to have mobility. We're the envy of a lot of professions, the lawyers, because we have that mobility. How do we keep that? And then we also have to look at a modern licensure framework, and Jason will talk a bit about that. Those are the two pieces that we're trying to balance and move forward together. NASBA has been working on, it's now no longer called a structured professional program. It's called a professional experience program, so PEP. But it's essentially a 120 plus 1 plus 1. 1 being more experiential off the transcript, but something that's a little more rigorous, and then 1 year of experience. The National Pipeline Advisory Group, they've been talking 6 different themes that they're looking at, and they've been looking at focusing on competencies. So the 2 years, kind of what is those competencies that are core to making sure someone is ready to be a CPA and is competent, and then also future-proofing the profession. So when we look at bachelor's, if that bachelor's changes to 90 hours one day, because there are conversations out there regarding that, how do we make sure we aren't here having this conversation in 5 years and in 10 years? We want to make sure we're set up for success going forward. And then the individual states, I mean, Jason would probably say there's many more states that can be colored.
We could color a lot more states since we put that there. Everyone's looking at the same challenges.
Yeah, everyone's looking at the same challenges. We took a survey of all the state societies, and when we looked at that, around 75%, 80% are focused on more that 120 plus 2, so that's where everybody's head's kind of at. And everyone is focused on mobility, whether it's automatic mobility, substantial equivalency, safe harbor. Everyone's kind of focused in having some common conversations around those themes. So that's AICPA working together. Jason is on a group that is a section of AICPA and a section of NASBA. So he's having conversations with those two groups. The individual states, we talk to the states one-off. I have a conversation with the 6 largest states, talk to the western states. So a lot is happening there. And then I'm part of the sponsoring organizations for the AAA, Future Accountant Stakeholder Symposium sponsoring organizations. And we're focused on high schools, community colleges, also the principal's course, and then the brand. So all these groups are kind of coming together in September to really talk about what's the next action steps to move forward. The NPEG report, just curious, how many of you have seen the NPEG report? Anybody in here? A couple of you? There's a QR code there. Just encourage you, there's an executive summary that's around 5 pages. Check it out. There's 6 themes that are noted within the report, basically making the academic experience more engaging. We'd all probably agree that that's important. The time and cost of education, that's really the 150, 120 discussion that we're having. Grow support for CPA candidates, exam candidates, and we talked about that. That's really critical. And then expanding access for underrepresented groups, part of the Belonging Initiative. Enhance the employee experience, and that's the compensation piece and the work-life balance that we've been talking about and had conversations yesterday. And then, of course, tell a more compelling story. How do we do that? So those are the 6 themes. And in September, we're meeting to say, how do we look at that and have some action steps to move forward?
And real quick, the other one, it's kind of embedded in the report and it's kind of follows this, is a pipeline pledge. So we heard a lot yesterday, and so there's a lot of great stories. So what can we do? As Ruben noted, I'm only but one, but I can make a difference. So what is that? And really, that's what the pipeline pledge is. It basically says, over the next year, I will do, I think, 1 or 2 things that will help support the pipeline, and could be as small as I'm going to go to a high school and help with the financial literacy course and tell them about the profession. And so, I highly encourage you to scan that, check that out, sign that. I think it's kind of an effort to kind of pull everyone together and really support that. And I think I would argue, if you go see my friend Colin in the back there and help support our institute, that is a way to help fund what we're doing from a CalCPA standpoint on the pipeline.
And we do want to have the most. California wants to have most pipeline pledges out there, so please go take it. There's 2 other pieces in there. There's a educator checklist and also a firm checklist. So just ideas, thoughts on how you can also move forward and help us with the pipeline initiative. So a lot of resources there. Please check it out. This is just by the kind of the outcomes of the report, how many people took the report, poll responses at our fall forum, so information that was gathered there. And as you can tell, there was a lot of information gathered to put together and come up with the 6 themes and also how we're going to move forward. So we're listening, and we want to hear from the members in the community to make sure that we're capturing what's important and how we can most effectively and efficiently move forward. So we put together, I think it's in March, right? The California Pipeline Advisory Group, and it was really meant to mirror the National Pipeline Advisory Group, but a group of our members that can come together and really help us when the information starts to come down the pipeline. And in March, it was like a floodgate that opened, because we were moving and there was a lot of actions that were being taken, conversations that were happening. And so we knew we needed a group to help inform how we move forward as an organization and as a California community. So we put together this group, esteemed group, and I don't know if anyone is in the room that's on this pipeline. Is it? Oh, Meredith is back there. Yes, Meredith is chairing it. But we're really ever so grateful for all these individuals who come together. We meet once or twice monthly as we need to, as information from NASBA, as information from AICPA on the national level. We talk about our next steps. Matt's in the room too, isn't he? I don't know where Matt is. Yep. Just on what we're going to do, what our next steps will be, and they help inform that. We have firms, different firm sizes, educators, Ruben's on the task force, on the group, educators, so all perspectives. We have Axel, who is a young professional, and the California Board of Accountancy also sits as advisors on the group, and they've been really, as they move forward, been asking the group for their input and feedback on steps that they're taking, because they want to make sure that they're very informed. So can't say enough about how we appreciate this group and all that they're doing to help us move forward.
So looking back at the unpacked report and kind of the different themes Denise highlighted, a few of them, these are all different pieces that are going to help support the pipeline in some fashion. They're all going to take different efforts and levers to pull, different timelines. All of them are important, and they're all going to be invested in different groups, and it's going to take a collaborative effort. The one I want to focus on again is that blue one there, the teal one, addressing the time and cost of education. That kind of goes to licensure requirements. The next couple slides I'll focus on kind of what we're doing, what the state boards of accountancy, and the conversation around what does a modern licensure framework look like and how do we implement that. That doesn't mean that we're not going to, the profession isn't considering all the other stuff. That's kind of happening concurrently. But I think so much focus is on the licensing piece. That's kind of the elephant in the room. And so until we really kind of address that from a profession standpoint, it's kind of hard to focus on a lot of the other pieces. So again, just because we're talking about licensing doesn't mean we need to, we're dismissing the telling the story or employee experience. We had a lot of conversation about all those different things. It's all very important. And again, talk to my friend Colin back there and kind of a lot of the program that we're doing to support those things. So as the kind of conversation kind of progressed over the last year or so, and there was national conversations, different states have different proposals to offer alternative pathways to licensure that are no longer kind of centered on that 150 education semester unit kind of foundation. The conversation of, okay, how do we approach that? How do we do that in concert with all the different state licensing jurisdictions? How do we do that without disrupting mobility, interstate practice? And so as that kind of, the profession said, let's have an honest dialogue about that, which for a long time it was hard to do that, but I think it's slowly progressed. Our Board of Accountancy said, okay, this is our opportunity for us to be proactive and engage in that conversation. And they kind of, what they call CPA Next. So this is kind of their approach, say, how do we inform that conversation? When we were adopting the 150 units, we were one of the last states to do it. We were kind of having to rush things through, and we felt like we didn't have a say in kind of what that national model looks like. And so we don't want to be in that situation again, so can we be ahead of the curve and help inform that? So the way they kind of went through the thought process was to actually modernize the licensing, we need to modernize the mobility provisions. We need to make sure that the rules of the road of how you practice across state lines are flexible enough and nimble enough that allows for states to have pathways to licensure that aren't going to disrupt that. And so we have to kind of decouple that. So take that part first. Let's have a conversation. What does that look like? And then how do we refocus and look at all the different components that feed into that licensure requirement? And then a lot of data and feedback. The Board of Accountancy did an extensive survey. They talked to our CPA group. They talked to a lot of other national groups, other state Board of Accountancy staff to kind of get some data and feedback.
Yeah, and we did help them too with town halls. So they had town halls with firms, different size firms, also with students. So they were very eager to get data and to get input. And they also, when they initially started to have these conversations, they pulled Jason and I in and said, here's what we're thinking. Let us know if we're aligned and if this is something that you can generally support.
So the CPA Next, like I said, they try to take the licensing and the mobility piece, look at that in concert and how they impact each other, but kind of bifurcate the decisions. So the first piece is that, okay, how do we modernize mobility? How do we add the flexibility so then we can get to the next question? And so the board really kind of put together different options. And candidly, part of it was what we're doing for California, but this was to help inform the other states of what their options are to kind of get to the solutions that for their state to consider. Because again, we have this ecosystem that we've built for the benefit of the profession But the challenges are that now we're all connected, and so we have to be in somewhat concert when we make changes. So really what the board said, to directing the staff to come back with legislation later for next year, language for later this year, legislation for next year, is to consider automatic mobility provision. That's that yellow box there. And really that kind of goes back to the heart of what the true intention of what mobility was intended to be. A CPA is a CPA. It doesn't matter what state you were licensed in, under what alternative or what pathway you were licensed under. You're a CPA licensed by a state of Nevada, New York, Florida, whatever. That should be good to come into California. The Board of Accountancy trusts those other state boards and vice versa. And so this is a kind of an effort, and I know a lot of your states are kind of looking at the same kind of approach of allowing for the mobility practice without having it so kind of connected with what the licensure model looks like.
And today there's 4 states that have automatic mobility: Alabama, Nebraska, Nevada,
North Carolina.
and North Carolina. So those states already have automatic mobility.
And so once you kind of address the mobility piece, okay, we got some flexibility, we're not going to have mobility based off of a specific pathway, then it allows you to have a more informed and flexible conversation on the licensure piece. And so the other half of that CPA Next is, okay, what does the licensure model look like? And the board kind of progressed, and they voted to support a kind of a 2-pathway system, which is very similar to what California had for many years, which is one essentially based off of a bachelor's degree and 2 years of experience in the exam, and then another one that's kind of now more analogous to what we have now with the master's education, 1 year of experience and the exam. I think that one of the pieces that it's really gotten a lot of attention, and I think the board gets a lot of credit for across the country, is getting away from a 150, 120 kind of unit threshold, because Denise mentioned that's an evolving conversation of what is a bachelor's degree, what is a master's degree. It could be different from school to school. It just kind of relies on our academic community to say, if you're giving a bachelor's in accounting, it doesn't matter if it's from USC, Sac State, wherever it is, we're going to trust that that's good, and that's kind of that threshold. We don't need to go look under the hood, different course titles, different mix of them. Do you have this? Do you have that? It gives a lot of flexibility and faith into our academic community to kind of create curriculums that make the most sense for their students.
And I would say right now, there was a SURE program, so it was Students Understanding the Requirements of Education that they launched last year. And part of that was students really don't, a lot of times they're only short 1 course or 2 courses, and they think they're ready to sit, and then they can't. And the frustration there, you can imagine. You're ready, and then you can't. So they launched that program to look at that, and this is just an extension of that intention.
And we've been very engaged that whole process. I think we're very fortunate with our Board of Accountancy staff and just the relationship we have them, and the members of the board too. They've really relied on us to get feedback. We've been active in that process. We have regular conversations with them, kind of bounce ideas off of each other, trade notes on what we're hearing from other stakeholders. And so we've sent an extensive letter this is I guess last week now, at the Board of Accountancy meeting where they were considering the mobility provisions and the pathways to licensure, kind of supporting and encouraging the board to move forward with the path that they're pursuing. We think it makes sense. This is the right way to go. This is what we're hearing from our folks. And so again, I think it's important to demonstrate from, at least on the California side, that there's some kind of collaborative work from the regulator side to the profession side.
And I'm just going to give Jason a plug, because all this is really the result of Jason sitting in every board meeting for years. I go to the board meetings now too, and just having that relationship, because without that relationship, we wouldn't be able to have some of these sensitive conversations. So it's just kudos to Jason for building this. Everything takes years. Even Bob, on the legislative side, takes years to build this. And so it's because of that.
And so next steps, what happens now? So the Board of Accountancy, again, like I mentioned last week at their July meeting, voted to pursue legislative language to affect those 2 changes related to the mobility piece and bring in alternative paths to licensure. So at their September meeting later this year, they will have actual language they can consider and have conversation with. So we're actually having a conversation next week with the board staff, say, okay, how do we start putting things on paper, what does that look like, and kind of fine-tuning these different pathways with the hope that we will have legislation that we can start moving in 2025, because this requires conversations with our legislature, different committees, other stakeholders to kind of explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why this is important for consumers in California, across the country, and for the profession. Concurrent to all that, as Denise mentioned kind of the earlier slides, is there's still this UAA national process where they're still trying to kind of figure out how to make this work from a national level. And the way California's approaching it is we're not dismissing that approach. So as concepts materialize and there's UAA language that kind of is in line with what California is doing, we will consider that and kind of incorporate that into it. So there's kind of two pieces going. I will say a lot of the states are having the same conversation and coming to the same kind of general concepts as what California is doing. So when the board staff approach us, say, hey, how do we inform this conversation? Really, they are leading it and kind of helping facilitate the conversation for all of their colleagues across the country. So a lot of people are watching California on what we're doing with the pipeline because, frankly, we have the flexibility and the ability to make a difference that they may not have in their states.
And we'll have many conversations next week or two because they are reaching out saying, what are you doing? How are you doing this? And we are trying, as Jason said, to collaborate on some common tenets and then also on our timing, right? Who's going to go in 2025 and then implement in 2026? What's the timing so that we don't have anyone really going rogue? Because the success of this is going to be, from the mobility standpoint, kind of moving together, and then it will give us some time to work on the nuances of the licensure piece. So this slide's just a reminder, which we think about every day. Collaboration is key here. The more we can collaborate, we have to amplify each of our actions and make sure we build on those. So that's something that's top of mind. And this has all been data. We've really been trying to use data and saying, if we change, what's the reason in the data for doing what we're doing, right? Because I have to tell you, I've looked at a lot of surveys, a lot of data, and I don't know that there's a compelling story out there for the 150. When I look at it, I don't know if people are better equipped. I'm not sure if we have better public protection. So if we're making changes, let's make sure we have data to support those. And that's been kind of the mantra, which I think is the right way to move. And then we want to be very transparent. We've been extremely transparent. We have pulled in AICPA, NASBA as we move forward and make sure that they know exactly what we're doing. So all our cards are on the table. Everyone knows, and that's how we all want to move forward.
And last comment here, and I don't know if we have time for questions, but it's important to kind of keep in context of where the conversation is now versus where the conversation was 6 months ago versus where it was a year ago. There's a lot of work to do, but I think we're actually having honest conversations about very tough topics, and now we're getting to the point of kind of circling around different solutions. And so there's a lot of progress. There's a lot to do still. Like I said, keep in mind, this is just one piece of those 6 items. We need to focus on the other 5, because those are going to be very important too. And so the hope is, can we get that model that gets people through the process as quickly as possible? But we still got to bring them to the gate to be able to get there to make a real big change. So,
if you ever have questions, please reach out to Jason and I. We are talking about this all the time. We're happy to talk to you. All questions are welcome, and all healthy critic comments are welcome too. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay.